What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name is Adam. I am your host. Today, we have a very special episode. For the first time, we're bringing on two guests. We have Eric and Tony, two guys that I've worked with in the past doing consulting on sports card stuff, kind of helping them out. They've asked questions, all that kind of good stuff there. So, guys, how are we doing tonight?
Awesome, Adam. How about yourself, buddy?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you guys coming on. I think this is going to be a great episode for people to get kind of an inside look at sort of how maybe funds and maybe people who are working together kind of in the sports card industry and who aren't really running like buying and selling just by themselves. I think this is going to be some great insights. So we'll start out here with Eric. How did you get back into sports cards?
Yeah, Adam, it's your typical story, right? When you move, you start to gather all of your old belongings. And in your old belongings, you may find a box, and that box may have some sports cards. With everything being in the news lately, the hobby growing, the first thing I did was rip open the box, grabbed a bunch of cards and started looking them up. The cards that I thought would be worth a lot of money when I was little turned out to be worth $1 to $5. So my mind was kind of racing. How could I get into the hobby?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, hearing that some of the cards are worth $1 to $5 is actually probably a lot better than some of the people who are opening their cards and seeing that they're worth actually like 5 cents. Like, that's when I got first back into it. My dad was like, "Oh, we have this crate full of cards." I'm like, "Yes, there's going to be hundreds of dollars worth of cards in here." And I opened it up. It's like all these like 800 count boxes that I got at like flea markets. And I'm like, "Yes, this is going to be great." I start flipping through them. I'm like, there's really nothing in here. This is a little bit disappointing, but that's kind of what happened. So Tony, same question to you. How'd you get back into sports cards?
Well, initially I got back in during the pandemic. I think people went through different phases. Mine started where I realized that I had extra time to kind of clean the house. So I went through and I just started to chip away, and I pulled out like big containers, and I was looking at them and I was like, something? I wonder what I should be doing with these. So I got the itch. I contacted Eric, and we just happened to be at the same time, like getting back into it and getting interested again. Not that we weren't interested, but life hits. So we just happened to do it at the same time. And ever since then, it's just been like a very organic process.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, a bunch of my friends have reached out to me and asking me like, which pack should I buy? And I try and tell them not to buy the packs, but it's almost impossible to get back into sports cards and not think that packs are the way to go, because growing up, that's like what most of us did. And I mean, for you guys, I'm sure that was probably something like when you were younger, that was probably like the packs were probably what most of us did. And I mean, for us and for people getting back in, like packs back then were like 20, 30 cents. Now you're going to Target and it's like $15 for some packs. Or more hobby packs, but some Target stuff. So, Eric, I'm interested, like, how did you kind of get back? Like when you were getting back in, what were some of the cards that you were first interested in first buying?
So I took a weird approach. The first thing I did was I hit Google. I wanted to understand what was out there, what types of brands, what the prices were. I'm a little bit of a weirdo. I went to Steel City and I sorted expensive to cheapest. And I went to the expensive and just randomly bought a couple boxes. The key ones I bought was 1920 Prism, pulled an awesome Ja Morant auto. And that fortunately got me right back headfirst into the hobby. So Prism basketball.
Yeah, I remember Prism basketball when that first came out. I think me and a buddy went to one of our local card shops and we bought 2 blasters, and the blasters that were $20 at the Targets, we bought them for $35 a piece. And we were like super stoked, and we opened them up, and come to find out now those blasters are like $250 a piece. So like we obviously, getting back into it probably like, that was probably like October, November, 2019. So we obviously, that was so long ago that we didn't really, know what was really going on, and or at least I did, because I was making content back then. But opening the box, we had no idea that was kind of how it was going to go. So Tony, how did you, like when you were getting back in, you reached out to Eric? Was that something where you were also buying boxes, or kind of how did you approach sort of your first steps getting back into the game?
Good question. So I did a little research. I went around to the local Walmart and to Targets, and I saw that there was like very little to nothing. And then if there was something, I saw that there were a massive amount of adult males who were like congregating around. So I was thinking to myself, there's something to this. So before I actually dove in, I went just to see what I had, and then I started cross-referencing on eBay. I did a little research, ComC. StarStock wasn't around at that time, but the other platforms were. So then I started to realize, I think that Eric may have some of these cards that I now have, and they were in pretty good condition, but they just didn't look as appealing as the newer cards, so it was really hard to get a gauge unless you did cross-reference, what would people like, what would people be into. I knew it was a matter of time that before things matured and people would find the value in those older cards, but just to kind of see how everything was coming at one time, it was like really good to take a step back and just see what I had first. And and then obviously with trial and error, we were able to pull our resources together and make smarter decisions.
The funny part is really what happened is he went down his own path. I went down my own path, and we kind of converged. We've been best friends since 7th grade.
Yep.
So this past October is when we both realized we both have dove first back into the hobby. And he ultimately went through my Prism box and was outlining like, here's what you got, here's what you need to sleeve, here's what you need to send away to PSA.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that's kind of one of the cool things, like with sports cards and kind of people getting back into it, is like I had Edward from Investicard, and he was explaining that like when he was getting back into it, he had something he called adult money. And when he said that, I was like, that's pretty true. Like I definitely agree with that. And that essentially kind of means like getting into Prism hobby boxes and being able to buy some of these more high-end boxes. So Eric, what's kind of what's your biggest thing that you would say is obviously from the money being more expensive, but like when you got back into it, did you have a different outlook on what you thought the hobby was going to be when you first started?
Yeah. So, diving back in and around the October timeframe, 2020, I was really focused on some of the wax boxes and not necessarily looking at graded cards at the right time. And, ultimately when we took a step back and we said, if we really want to be involved in sports cards, there's a couple different areas that we can go down. One is the wax boxes. A couple other ones, right, is, me and him put our own money together and started a small business. But ultimately, the way that we saw the market going, as evidenced by, I think it was CNN's article today, is that the sky was really the limit. So that's where we said, we can go down this kind of retail path, or we can get together and discuss what would it really take to start up a capital group. And that's kind of, what spurred this real, through the gasoline in the fire for us diving head first into the hobby.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's kind of how we sort of connected. You'd reached out to me about potentially kind of talking to some of the people in the group and, helping out with some of the info that I was kind of doing a lot of research on as a content creator. So, Tony, for you, working with Eric, how did that relation, obviously other than being best friends
Sure.
from when you guys were kids, but like, how did the sports card relationship start? Like, what was kind of the first steps that you guys worked together, and then kind of how has that changed, I guess?
I think I could see people not utilizing their time as wisely. And I'm not there's something to say for people who are willing to go and stay at these retail places for a long period of time and there's something for that, because they get it, then they put it out in the market, and then but for us, like the most valuable thing that we have, I think I can say for both of us, is time. So we were thinking, how can we utilize our time best while still enjoying what it is that we're doing, and make a little bit of money and gain a little bit of exposure. So that's just kind of like the approach was all based on just time. Like, what do you want out of this? What are you willing to give up? And I'm not willing to sacrifice my time or my friendship for cards. So as long as I kind of keep that in place, I feel like we're always going to be able to have that kind of balloon tether situation. We'll be able to be balanced, and we'll always just kind of love it. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. Everybody's in it to make a little bit of money. But
Absolutely.
it's more of, in the end, you want to look back and say, how much time did I spend at a retail store, or how much time did I spend like ripping open packs? And there's just other avenues. If you think a little bigger and you're working with the right people, yeah, things can start rolling for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's always fun to kind of get into sort of stuff, and when you know two people are interested in the same thing, and especially for you guys since you've known each other for so long. So, Eric, another question for you. At what point did you think that this could be just more than maybe just going to like Steel City and buying a box of cards? Like, was there a moment for you where you looked at and you said, like, there's money to be made here and there's kind of a business to get started? So like for you, like, what was that kind of moment like for you?
Honestly, a lot of it has to do with content that's available, right? Like, we're more connected than ever. I work for a big tech company, so that whole notion of, self-serving information, you're a big part of that, watching your content.
Mm-hmm.
It's some of the numbers that started getting put up. A really good year in a bank account with an investment banker, it's like 15%. That's a really good year.
Right.
But if you take a step and look at what are some of the 86 Fleer basketball doing, what are some of even the modern cards, how are they performing month over month? So for me, it really just was when I started consuming content, when I started self-serving and finding my own information and the answers to my questions. It's some of the big numbers that were going up, and that's obviously appealing, right? Full-time job, family, 2 kids. I'd love to bank all of that money and have another stream of revenue, as I'm sure everybody else did because of the pandemic. We start thinking differently.
Yeah, I agree with that. And getting into the information side of it, I think, one thing that getting into sports cards in like beginning of 2018-ish, that was the one thing that I thought that there was almost none of. Like, there was almost no information. Like, when I was looking stuff up, it was like I would look up a specific question and then I would have to search 10 different websites and none of them would give me the answer. And that's kind of why, the content for me has been like a learning process. Like, a lot of the content that I try and create, and I'm sure if anybody's listened to the podcast, watched the show, they've seen there's growing pains with learning about stuff. And I think within the sports card industry, I think we're still kind of in the beginning stages of that type of content. Like, I'm pretty optimistic. I think that there is a ton of potential within content within sports cards. Tony, so for you, like, your outlook on sports cards, like, do you see this as an industry? I mean, obviously something that can make money, but where do you see kind of the industry as a whole, maybe in like a few years from now?
I don't want to give any knee-jerk reaction, so I just want to marinate on it for a second. So, a roundabout way of saying I think has potential, because I feel like there's a lot of potential in just people in general. And as people start to gain more personal interest, information, they'll find more information and they'll start to see there really are, in my eyes, endless potential. All the way down the line, and there's variables that are going to happen, and it can turn into a market. And I see the market right now creating itself. And I think a lot of people feel that there's a crash that's going to occur. If people get fatigued so much, and if there's enough individuals trying to, either get clickbait content, or there's enough individuals who are trying to go against the grain and not embrace it and want the best for people, well, then I don't know what to say to that. That kind of stinks, and we will see certain individuals be able to almost have an impact, an immediate impact on the market. But when it's all said and done, I see it's a gender neutral. It doesn't matter your religion. It doesn't matter anything other than your time putting in, what you love. And I could honestly look at a card and love something different than someone who I probably would never have the opportunity to speak with, right? And they like a different aspect, but together I learn to appreciate that from them and they learn from me. So it's one of the rare times, and I've been involved in a lot of social events, organized sports. It's one of the rare times where there are no barriers. And so for someone to try to discredit in any way or just not treat this as something positive that all people can benefit from, I feel like that's a tragedy. So to answer your question, I think with education and time, I just feel like we're going to see things keep rolling.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, literally, I've been hearing about this so-called crash literally since Jordan cards were $30,000 for a PSA 10. So it's like I have this take that the the person who says that there's going to be a crash, their take will never expire. Their opinion that the crash is coming is something that they've thought since the beginning, and it's something that they're going to think till the day that they're not around or whatever. But like
Sure.
they're, and I don't know, maybe they can change, but the thing is, it's just like there's evidence supporting both sides of it, I suppose. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's, for me, it's like to use the crash as a reason for someone not to get into sports cards, and not at least to like learn like business, like, because that's one of the big things that I think that, you know, I've learned a lot about just being in business or being in the sports card industry, is like learning how to sort of like run a business and like, you know, supply and demand, research, networking. I mean, that's what kind of doing the content. That's something that I've tried to focus on. So, you know, I mean, I'm obviously very positive and I have a very strong outlook on the hobby. Eric, I'm also interested to kind of hear your thoughts about like what you think the overall outlook of the hobby is.
Yeah, I mean, Tony said a lot of, you know, great topics, as did yourself. So in any journey, right? Take going up a mountain, for example. When you're going up the mountain, at some point you might go down just a little bit to go up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Bitcoin hit a new high yesterday, $50,000, after it was supposed to crash 100 times.
Exactly.
Right. Litecoin, Ethereum, you know, everything's going to have ups and downs, but there's more content available. There's more news outlets.
Mm-hmm.
There's more social media platforms. There's more people taking to Twitter and promoting a different card, a different brand. So my outlook is positive. And that's a large reason of, you know, why we got together with a handful of private bankers, private equity and venture capitalists to establish a capital group.
You know, real fast, I wanted to touch on, when we were coming up, we were talking about how we opened up packs, and, you know, at the time there were a lot of packs, right? And then you hear a lot about the junk wax era. It's interesting to me because I've made a point to him in the past, you know, from let's say 1989 to 1993. All right, let's just say there were a lot of absurd amount of cards being produced. Well, from that time to now, there's been an absurd amount of people being created, right? And like he was saying, there are more avenues to exchange. I mean, I see kids who are very good with Cash App. You know what I mean? So with all those different areas and spaces, people can, it's instant. So that's another reason why when I hear people talk about that, I want to say, look, you got to take your DeLorean back to the past, because the truth is things are so different, and we're hearing things being regurgitated, but from the context of 25 years ago, not from what's happening right now, and seeing how much innovation is exponentially growing. I can only imagine what things are going to look like in a year. It's going to be awesome.
Agreed.
Yeah, I've been sort of developing a take that maybe I can sort of debut my initial thoughts, maybe like a stand-up comedian trying out a stand-up bit for the first time.
Love it.
I just think that sometimes the hobby can project their feelings onto the generations before us, where like we in the hobby, we loved opening packs as kids. We want our kids opening packs, but like maybe kids don't want to open packs. And maybe that's a take where I need to do a little bit more research to figure out if that's a thing, or if that kind of aspect of it is not correct. But, you know, like you said, kids nowadays, they understand stuff a lot differently than maybe we did as kids. So like, you know, a Top Shot, or like just from a making money standpoint, like I think that they understand. The internet has changed the way everything works. And I think like from a money standpoint, like kids that are, I mean, there's probably rules on ages and stuff like that, but 13, 14, 15 years old, they can make hundreds of thousands of dollars in the sports card industry. Like, so it's like, I just think that kids maybe enjoy a different aspect of the hobby. And, you know, maybe that could even be a reason why you're seeing a lot of the value type content where it's mainly talking about sales and mainly talking about like prices going up and down, why that's kind of the most popular, I guess you could say, type of content in the hobby. So, you know, I guess it's still something the take is still something I'm developing there, but I think that, you know, there is something there where, like, I'm in Clubhouse and stuff like that. I'm hearing people talk about how, they're disappointed that they can't go pick up packs for their kids, or they
Right.
can't go to Target anymore because everybody's flipping the boxes. And like, I think that that is an issue. Like, there needs to be a way to get the products into people's hands, I guess.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's like, maybe people don't care as much about opening packs as they do flipping cards, and that may
Sure.
be something that we're seeing that's a little bit different in the industry nowadays, I think.
It's an important take for sure.
Yeah.
Like you said, their value is, based off of supply and demand, and kids with access to things like Cash App, Venmo, flipping, eBay, different marketplaces.
Yeah.
There's no question in my mind that they see some of the older people with bigger, nicer things, and they see this as a great avenue to go down a path of either being a small business owner or just getting into it for, the sake of the hobby.
Yeah.
So you guys had mentioned that you had kind of started some sort of business together within the sports card. So I'm definitely interested to hear kind of more about that. So Eric, I guess you can kind of talk about that. And then Tony, if you have anything after they kind of go, I'm definitely interested in hearing from both of your guys' perspectives on kind of what the happenings of that business is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we talked about a little earlier, when we got back into the hobby, there's a determination of value, right? When you buy cards, they may go up. So over a course of 3 or 4 months, as we were thinking about what different businesses, right? We've seen all sorts of businesses pop up. Usually it's an influencer talking about stacking up 15 wax boxes, throwing them in the closet, and then talking about how they've gone up.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting. And it's also a great opportunity for a lot of people to get into the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, we wanted to think a little bit bigger. We wanted to have an opportunity to buy higher value items because we were hoping that would lead to higher projected profit, right? So that led us to establishing the KO Capital. It's a private equity group. We're comprised of me and Tony are the managing partners, and we have 8 limited partners, a combination of Silicon Valley tech folks, physicians, and then kind of as our backbone, we have some guidance helping us navigating the financial waters of the private equity business. To make a long story short, it was a raise. We did a fundraise. Everyone put in a significant amount of money. We took that pot of money, and Tony kind of took over from the business development side. And I'll kind of let you, map out how we made some decisions.
So that's a good question. How do we map out the decisions? I think initially we rode the hype. We needed to. We realized that is going to be the quickest way to be able to gain enough capital to be able to move. I guess ladder up is the best way to put it. Also, there was just so much content. There was so many documentaries. It was a year anniversary of Kobe. There were obviously there was talks about Magic Johnson. I had, like, a couple months before, watched Vince Carter, so I could see how these events were influencing the market. So it was like, listen, man, if we can get ahead of this, this is when, like, understanding humans, understanding yourself. You know what I'm saying? Stepping back and saying, what would I typically do if I was someone who's outside looking in? I more than likely would go right to who I thought were the best. So before I actually started pulling the trigger, I did a lot of research on different reference points, whether it's pro basketball reference, pro football reference, and just to kind of see where people were currently as they had the potential to end up maybe as an all-time great. People like John Stockton, who I could be wrong. I just don't see anyone breaking that assist record. Like, there's just certain things that I was able to identify through those references, and then I was like, you know what, these are probably safe bets. That we didn't think about when to get out. We thought about get in right now. And if you just don't take the opportunity, I think when Gretzky said it the best is, like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So we just started attacking those players. We saw it go up. And we had already had enough research to kind of understand a scarcity. We already pop reports. We had all the things that you need in order to really dive deep. So that's why the initial was to get the people who changed the game, the Currys, the LeBrons. I love Kobe, and someone may be pissed off at me about this, but Kobe is very much similar to how Jordan played. So he was amazing, but I didn't see him change the game the same way as some of these other guys, even though he is by far, obviously, one of the best basketball players to ever live. So that was kind of our approach. Who changed the game? Who, I don't want to say squeaky clean, but who was kind of quiet? You know, and those quiet guys are the ones who kind of, they creep up, like Tim Duncan kind of creeped up a little slower. It's those guys that were really important to us because we just knew it was just a matter of time before people really started to understand, like, ooh, these numbers, just, I don't know if these numbers are going to be beat. And there are a lot of championships in these guys, and people just aren't really on to them yet. So
yeah, you know what Tony's kind of highlighting is there's, you know, we talked about it earlier. There's a significant amount of content that's available.
Sure.
Tools that everybody has access to.
Mm-hmm.
So using data to help drive decisions is a key foundation of how we got our initial capital. We took a lot of the players that Tony talked about, looked at which cards have grown month over month. Can you run projections based off of how they're increasing, or if they're, you know, kind of stagnant, are they going to catapult forward? So, you know, the key portion is using content. You know, we're thankful for everybody that's posting YouTube content, TikTok content.
Definitely.
We're thankful for things like Card Ladder, market movers that you know, they're pushing the industry forward, and they're putting data in the hands of people like us who want to use that data to help grow a small business.
Yeah, I think a bunch of the things that you said there made like a ton of sense. And like I was getting back into kind of more buying. I think the summer of 2019, I had a part-time job as a umpire for an adult softball league. Awesome. And a lot of the money actually that it paid pretty well considering it was what it was. But a lot of the money that I was getting from that actually went towards cards. But even at that time, it really wasn't like what it is now. And I think one thing that when I was looking at the kind of the industry as a whole, I was looking at players like Shaq, Kobe, like you had mentioned, Tim Duncan, KG. I mean, even John Stockton, like those players, to me, it just didn't make any sense why those players, like, for example, like in that summer, I was looking at Shaq PSA 10 Topps rookie cards, and they were like $30 for a PSA 10. And I looked at that, I was like, this literally makes, and this was still the time when like Lukas were still probably like $70 or $80. And I looked at that and I said, that doesn't make any sense. Like, even though, you know, at the time it was still only about a $50 difference, it just didn't make sense to me why these cards were what they were. And I had a theory that people also would kind of come into the industry who didn't really particularly, it's not that they didn't like the new players that were in the league, but they just liked the players that they grew up watching a lot more. So for you guys, like the Kobe's, the KG's, maybe the John Stocktons, all the 80s and 90s players, like I just thought that people like them more. Like when I think of my favorite players, like I think of like Nomar, I think of like even a Devin Hester, like a Derek Lowe, like players that aren't in the league right now. Like David Ortiz is another example. But like, you know, so for you guys, was that something that was in your mindset of cards that when you came in, like did it make as much did it not make as much sense as it did to me when I was looking at some of these cards, like why the older cards weren't kind of keeping up with some of the newer cards?
Initially, absolutely. Like the data just did not make sense. Your Shaq reference, like how would that be $30, right? When some of the other cards weren't. So, you know, as we kind of leverage that data, you know, in the back of our minds, we have a commitment to the people investing in us that we're making good decisions. We also have to understand that everybody has a different level of risk that they're willing to take on with their own money. So a lot of that gets weighted into our purchasing decisions. So today marks exactly 1 month since we formed. It's been a wild month. I think we had about 6 to 8 cards, and the total projected profit with seller's fees comes out to about 58%. So it's a healthy return. A couple of days ago, if you had asked us, we were in the 88% projected profit range. But you know, that's something that our investors, they're super enthusiastic about. It's also prompted, we have our initial group. We're now talking about starting to raise an additional fund. So that's something that we're focused on, and specifically in the next week or so.
That's awesome. And I know you had mentioned that you had a couple cards with you that you wanted to show. So I'm definitely interested to see kind of what you guys have in your collection that you're willing to show here today. Like that would be super cool.
Yeah, let's go at it.
So we, before this, sent away a Jordan to Golden Auction. So we'll see what happens with that. It's always exciting. But just to kind of get on, we did have a sticker Fleer. I know this is what Vegas Dave was burning on.
Yeah, what he was burning. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Definitely a real card he burnt.
Right, that's cool. Right, it's just not healthy for your lungs either. I don't know why you would do that, especially during
right,
the pandemic.
Yeah. I'm also pretty sure it's illegal to burn money, but we'll just, we'll move past that one.
Yeah,
exactly.
So also, I just wanted to touch on that. So that was important to us, getting that sticker. Just getting any Jordan at that time, I didn't have to tell you, it was challenging, And then we did pick up this Kobe. There was the Chrome at the time. It was scarce, but we were able to get better deals. Just getting these on the base, and then we had one of my personal favorites, just because he looks like he's like in fourth grade. He's going to a sock hop. Like this guy right here is when I say change the game, and how he's playing right now. And the fact that his team isn't in full strength, and Clay, when everyone's back and everything's hitting on all cylinders, he's only getting better. So for those reasons alone, I just thought to myself, Kobe, he wasn't going to be able to tear an ACL, and Jordan, I mean, barring golf, hopefully he doesn't hurt himself. He wasn't going to do that either. And Steph, the way he plays, he just doesn't take a lot of big hits. You know what I mean? He did have a little bit of an injury not a little bit, but he had an injury last year. But that's neither here nor there at this point. The way he's playing, the way he looks, stronger than ever. So those are just a couple cards that we're kind of proud of. Just when we got them, when we jumped into comparison to how we got them right now, and we did some good negotiating. We're fair. People were willing to work with us. And it was nice.
So kind of what you said a little earlier about taking a look at a player or card and understanding the price, the latest sold, right? So we went pretty heavy on Kobe Bryant.
Yeah,
he was cheap. Like in October, we're talking like the $2,000 range for Kobe. It doesn't make sense,
right?
I think the fastest growth card was obviously the 2009 Steph Curry. There's maybe one or two available on eBay. We smash the buy it now button, I think at like 7,000. The latest was like 18.5. But the other thing, going back to what Tony said, is like, it's supply and demand.
Sure.
What are the population counts?
Yep.
And as long as, they're not making these cards, maybe there are some that people have in a shoebox, but from a population perspective, there's not going to be any, not many new PSA 10s in a couple of these players. And that's why we went pretty heavy in them.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think with those cards, I mean, the reasoning and everything, I mean, those are obviously phenomenal cards. I mean, I love the Jordan sticker. I think the sticker and the card are actually going to be maybe not similarly priced eventually one day, but I think they are going to be closer maybe than they are now. I think, the sticker, it's basically a card. Like if it's in a PSA case, it's just a card. Like technically it's a sticker, but like, if it's in a PSA case and it says the number that it came in the set or whatever. So, I mean, I think that's a great card. I mean, the Steph Curry, I think the thing for Steph Curry, and over the Christmas break, I visited my in-laws, and my mother-in-law was talking about how she knew who Steph Curry was. And my wife was like, wait, you know who Steph Curry is? And I think that's almost like, that's a thing that I almost want to try and implement into like a content strategy, is like, if your mother-in-law knows who a player is, then it's probably a good buy. Like, because he's on like the TV show and he's in like commercials and all that type of stuff. So I think that's it's like a funny thing, but it's actually like in my head, I'm like, that just makes a lot of sense. Like I think that's correct. But so I mean, getting in, so like that's for you guys, that's kind of what you looked at. Like you didn't really look at much of the modern stuff, like any of the new 2018, 2019, and then 2020 now. So did you guys add any of that stuff to your collection, or did you kind of focus on more like 90s and early 2000s guys?
Yeah, we absolutely have some of that to our collection. And one of the funny things that I like to think about is like, if whoever's watching this video, you guys probably already know who we bought. Like you already know which players we focused on. You already know who's going to be a high earner.
Sure.
It's going to be a lot of folks from the Dream Team. It's going to be a lot of folks that you hear on TV that your in-laws are familiar with.
Sure.
And it's still going back to just the hardened case of economics, supply and demand, population counts.
Right.
So some of the cards we focused on, right, Ja, Zion. We obviously grabbed a handful of Lucas. For me, when I hopped back in October, convinced the physician that I'm friends with, we bought a couple Giannis prisms. So it's been generally fun, right? Kevin Durant, we bought a stack of his Topps rookies. And then, believe it or not, I think I had the numbers. The fastest growth card was the 1980 Magic Johnson Boone PSA 9. We had about 300% growth on that. So it's, kind of a mix. For me, I'm a little more passionate about the dream team. And like Tony said, a lot of these players aren't going to get hurt. And you're not going to stop talking about them. And we still have the Hall of Fame inductions coming up in May. So it'll be an exciting time for sure.
I will say as well, just briefly on that point, I think that during the 90s, I think that basketball probably was, I don't want to say it's glory years. I don't want to say that, but I just remember that was the thing to watch. Like that is what you did. I mean, I grew up wrestling. If you see me play basketball, you'd be offended, but I still just could not stop watching it, and call me bandwagoner, but I love Jordan. I'm just talking about how hard he worked. I'm talking about what he brought every single game, and everyone else just rose to the occasion. So at that time, it was, oh man, it was just like imprinted, I'm not saying it's not that way now, but it was, I don't know. It's like you sit down with your family, and you would watch it. You didn't have much else to do, to be honest with you.
Right.
But still, that's the one reason why we look back, and it humbles us so much to be able to see those players from back in the day. Remembering when Shaq broke the glass when he dunked it. It's like, are you kidding me? When we saw that, I was just like, this guy is a super freak. He's a hero. I wanted to be like him. I could never do that. But so those are the type of things that bring us back to that point. It could be a little nostalgia, but I just think that basketball was it was at a really good place at that point.
Yeah, I think it's totally just a different atmosphere nowadays. Like, you have players who, like a LaMelo Ball or like a Jalen Green or there's a guy at Texas Tech, I forget what his name is, but you have like these younger players coming up through like social media and like being in the spotlight. And I'm wondering if it's almost a little bit harder now because they're like LaMelo Ball was being featured on Instagram accounts with 10 million followers when he was like 15 years old. So I'm wondering like how that affects a player. Like if they're almost, and LaMelo Ball, I kind of think it is an extreme example because then he goes and he plays over in Australia and he doesn't play in college. So like it's probably changed a little bit, but I definitely think, like a player like Jordan or a player like Kobe, just they could focus on the game a lot easier because like you said, there weren't as many distractions. And, I think you guys might think this story is funny. You talked about not being great at basketball. When I would go play at the rec league, like the rec department, they would call me Slops because my handles were so bad. So that was always a ton of fun going down there and just getting ragged on and missing a bunch of shots. But that's just how it goes. So I've got one more question for both you guys, and it's a question that I ask all the guests that come on the podcast. I think you guys probably have maybe even a different perspective than most, but so we'll start with Eric here. What is your dream card?
Oh, dream card. You know what? I'm a simple man. The 86 Jordan PSA 10. Absolutely. And I'm sure that's what 99% of the people are probably saying as well.
Yeah.
And Tony, dream card?
Scarcity, and because blue is so easy on the eyes, I would have to say Gretzky's rookie card. I would have to say, I mean, perfect 10, obviously, but just when you look at it, it's just, I just know how tough it is to get it in a 10, and he's one of my favorite players. I think you have to put him up in the category with the Jordans. I mean, you don't have to, but I'm going to. That's just my opinion. So yeah, I mean, and because of that, in the scarcity, that's my dream.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. So I really appreciate you guys coming on the show. Do you guys have anything that you want to promote, like any social media accounts, anything that you guys are looking to promote, just to share with the audience?
No, nothing to promote. We're kind of underground, quiet. We're enjoying the growth rates that we're seeing right now. But I want to make like really clear is that we're very bullish on the hobby. All of the content creators, people that are contributing to the hobby, continue doing that. If you're watching this, there's absolutely opportunity to get in. You don't have to have a lot of money to start something like a capital group. Get a couple friends together, pick a card, buy it, pay close attention, and then use all of the data that's available that we all have access to. But also be prepared to make decisions quickly and always have some level of risk that you want to be able to accept. And that's where we are.
And last but not least, I try to live by the rule of thumb that, none of us were born with crystal balls. So we're not gonna be able to tell the future, and we can't read minds. So if anyone has really high convictions, you got to just take it with a grain of salt and realize that we're all just humans and we're going through this day by day together.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. So I really appreciate you guys coming on.
Yeah, Adam, thanks for the time. But I got to ask, what's your dream card?
Oh, my dream card. I've actually been thinking about this because I always ask, and I don't think anyone has asked me, but I think it would have to be, see, the problem is some of my favorite players are like Nomar, who they don't have like these low numbered cards, but one of my other favorite players is Devin Hester. So I would have to say, like, if there's a 1-of-1 Devin Hester rookie, like that would probably be one of them. That I think that's probably the one, because I used to play Madden a lot, and when I was he was like a 99 speed
he was so
defensive back, and you just switch him over to wide receiver and nobody knows, and then you just throw it deep and he scores a touchdown almost every single time. It was like a glitch. So like he then became my favorite player ixo facto, and I would say probably a 1-of-1 Devin Hester would probably have to be one of my, or probably my dream card. I don't know if I've been racking my brain a lot recently, but that would probably be what it is right now, at least.
I was going to say, we'll get you a Devin Hester, but I don't know if it'll be a 1-of-1.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for the time, guys.
Thank you very much, Adam. Take it easy.